welcome back to Sobremesa Chat. Moving into episode 3, and I'm so excited because today we're going to be talking about el amor, just in time for Valentine's Day, or at least Heart Month. My husband
Yes.
works at a cardiology hospital, and it is Heart Month, so
Oh,
yeah, so it kind of all rolls into one, right?
yeah.
Um, well, we're so glad you're here to join us today. My name is Hilda McClure. I'm the COO of Cannenta Center, and I'm joined by the lovely Elizabeth Palafox, who's our lead clinician in San Antonio, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Palafox, LCSW, and I'm the lead clinician here at the San Antonio office.
I'm so excited about today's conversation. I'm always excited about
Me
our
too.
conversations, but I'm so excited about this one particularly because I think our culture loves love, right? Like the
Mhm.
telenovelas and
Mhm.
like just like, right, it's so much more romantic in Spanish than it is in English. You don't know what love is until someone calls you mi vida, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I just think, and like all the Spanish love songs, we love love. Um, and so today, like as we kind of dive into dating and relationships, I think the goal is to really talk about it through a cultural lens. So talking about how it shows up in our Latinidad, in our culture specifically, versus maybe mainstream American culture.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that regardless of culture, um, back during was it 2020 2021 where they like named the epidemic loneliness.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so I
Like
don't know if you, yeah,
post-pandemic.
yeah, post pandemic, right, and so we're in a I think we continue to be in a loneliness epidemic. I don't think that
Yeah.
actually has gone away.
Mm.
um
I think it's maybe gotten worse.
Worse, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say that. I do think it has gotten worse. Something else that's I think that's really interesting too, um, is I don't know if you saw the study that was released around how, uh, was it the big five personality traits that I think it's
Mm-hmm.
conscientiousness has gone down.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And conscientiousness helps us as a society be kind. And when that goes down, it means that we feel more okay to be abrasive or rude. And I think we see that too, which then kind of compounds with the loneliness epidemic, right? Because I don't want to necessarily be around people that are going to be rude to me.
That I distrust.
Yeah, yeah. So there's like a little perfect storm.
Just
Um,
with relationships and friendships in general.
yeah, absolutely. I also think that there's a lot of anxiety around dating. Gen Z supposedly is the generation that's having the least amount of sex,
Mhm, mhm.
um, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're not in relationship or romantic relationship, but I think that does say something about connection, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think,
And go ahead.
um, with Gen Z, with millennials, the expectations that can also induce some of that anxiety, with social media being like, oh, um this person's relationships on display, and then this person's getting married and this person's having a baby, and then those expectations and timelines that I think more and more people are open to challenging that or questioning what makes sense for them, but there's
Mhm.
still that sensation or feeling of, but also, do I still have enough time, or am I going to find that?
Yeah. I am not dating right now. I have been married for 8 years, actually 8 years next month.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, we will have been together 10 years
wow.
in about two
Cool.
weeks. Yeah. So I'm really thankful to be out of the dating pool, but I also hear that the dating pool is hot garbage right now
Mhm,
at all
mhm.
ages.
Yeah, yeah. I'm also not, and maybe we should have had a
A
third
single
person,
person.
single person. No, but well, I'm engaged. I've been with my partner for 6 years now. But it's similarly like we have friends and we can't help but hear, what's going on the apps or what's going on. Like you can set something up and then in a second it's like, oh, last minute cancellation, and then it just doesn't sound fun.
No, it really doesn't. And I wonder how much of that also heightens that kind of anxiety about dating around like the
Hmm.
expectation and getting there. And then I think that culturally, like as at least as Latinas, I don't know that men feel the same amount of pressure, but I know that like as women we do around getting married and having kids, and like that is like the whether it's said or not, and if depending on like levels of acculturation, right? That is a big there's a big push for that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you're like, also, mommy, no hay nadie. There's no one, there's no one out there. But I still keep feeling like it's time to date.
But it's possible. It's possible. Have a friend who we're actually like scheduled to get married like within 2 weeks of each other,
Amazing.
and her fiance met through Tinder, and he's like the loveliest person ever, and they have such a strong relationship. So it's also not to say it's not possible. I think sometimes we just have to get over that psychological block, and then we'll get into what that might look like, and just helping reframe some of the expectations and even cultural attitudes that come with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the hardest things that we kind of bring into dating is our own stuff. Like,
Hmm.
like just how we feel about ourselves going into dating. And I think with the rise of social media, I keep saying the rise of social media like it hasn't already risen, but like with just social media in general and so much of the comparison game that's right before our eyes. Um, and I think there's some people that think they might be immune to it, but the brain doesn't actually work that way. If you do any kind of research in social psych talks quite a bit about. I don't have any of the vocab words off the top of my head, but talks about that we play the comparison game all the time because it's one way that we learn how to relate with others.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so the whole act of being in relationship with others, a lot of times there are comparisons that happen to help us figure out our place in the world.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then I think that I mean, I don't know. I can talk about Puerto Rican culture. You can maybe talk about Mexican culture,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I know that like in Puerto Rican culture, we tend to dress up a little bit more than the average person. When I go to Walmart and like people are in pajamas, especially when I first moved here, that was like unheard of. Like we do not do that in Puerto Rico. It's a going out shirt and your best skinny jeans and unos tacos.
Hmm.
Um, and so I know that dating, I would just remember dating in Puerto Rico, just it being like really centered on my own appearance. How they
Hmm.
present men tend to be a little bit more metro.
Hmm.
In Puerto Rico, it's such a contrast because right,
Interesting.
like in Fort Worth, like everyone has like a pair of cowboy boots and they have like
Hmm.
worked with a cow or something. Puerto Rico, it's not like that. I mean, I think about like even we talked before we started the episode. We talked about Bad Bunny winning a Grammy.
Yes.
So love, love, love. But I even think about he's like a good kind of like person to kind of look at because even with him and the way he presents, there's a lot of like flexibility in right like
Hmm.
his
Hmm.
presentation style, but it's always very cleaned up. It's
Hmm.
always very, and I think that as a whole, the culture kind of leans into that. And so if you're kind of trying to go into a dating relationship and you don't feel like you meet the standard or whatnot, like that makes it extra hard to feel like someone's gonna like me. Um, and what do I have to fix, right, to um, make this work?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I would say that um again, just speaking on my own experience growing up in a Mexican family, I would say it's a little bit less around like aesthetic, like style aesthetic, more around um even like just how your body looks, of being a certain weight or being a certain like as far as women, being, I think that curvaceous, right?
Mhm,
That
mhm.
curvaceous body type, and then men being more like the muscular or like, toned, even and then even outside of the physical appearance in Mexican culture, I had talked to you about this when we were preparing, was to be loved Mexicanly.
Yeah.
And there was a post, and I meant to pull it up, but they had a snippet of a telenovela,
Mhm.
and that showed, how being loved Mexicanly is just being loved so passionately, and like you're speaking to each other in poetry, and there could be PDA, and sometimes your level of comfort with expressing things in that way. Not everybody has love languages of like words of affirmation or romantic gestures. And so I think the dramatization can be there, but you might not want to express it in that way. And so that can be a challenge at times.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we, whether we realize it or not, we have so many cultural narratives that kind of go into how we show up in romantic relationship and what that's supposed to look like. And I think about if we, grow up in a household that kind of stereotypes this like um, being loved Mexicanly, right? And we just kind of see the ups and downs of sometimes what that could look like on the very extreme end, where it's like a lot of yelling and a lot of fighting, and then all of a sudden they're dancing in the kitchen. It almost like normalizes like that kind of behavior for us. And so we put on this pedestal that like if we're not fighting, it's not passionate, or right, and it sometimes can be a little bit of a cultural stereotype that we kind of bring into
Mhm.
our relationship.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard, and sometimes we don't even notice these things, like, right, we can't see it until you
Right,
take a
right.
step
Mhm.
back. I also think that culturally we also have a lot of shoulds.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? I should be married by now. I shouldn't be alone. And I think I wish, next year we're gonna have to bring a guy on here because I think it's a little bit different for guys um, than it is for girls, especially around some of these shoulds. Like I don't know, they might. Some of them might feel I should be married by now, but I don't know if they feel it as much as we do.
I don't even know if it's marriage. It's more like having kids. Like
Oh,
I've heard that of I should be a dad by
mm,
now. I should,
mm,
and then more about productivity. I should be a better provider. Or I should be
mm,
like a good provider. Um, that's what I've tended to hear more when it comes to like expectations for men. And then yeah, of course for women, it's I should be um married, or I think also maybe like pick one. Like I should pick family or like raising a family over some of the other things on like studying or work, to be like fully committed into it. And then I should be almost like that should be my what I'm striving for is being a wife and mom.
yeah,
Again, there's a lot more challenging that, and I think there's more open conversations. It's not that black and white, but similarly, it's like an underlying feeling.
absolutely. And I think that feeling can coexist with um, newer thinking, right? Like I say newer thinking, but right, that just right, like you can be maybe in Gen Z, that Gen Z has had a lot more exposure to information than maybe previous. So right, like some of the concepts that you and I had to learn in adulthood, they've already learned around American, like more mainstream American dating,
Yeah.
etc. But that doesn't necessarily mean that feeling goes away. or that
Mhm.
there isn't like a level expectation, especially if
Mhm.
that is kind of what your parents are expecting
Right.
of you.
Right.
Yeah. Um, I also think that sometimes in our culture, dating has a lot of pressure. Like
Right.
that we can't just like right like if you're going on a couple different dates, you get like a really harsh label for both genders, right? And really dating can just be really fun. It doesn't have to be a I'm gonna okay, if I go on this date I have to basically leave engaged.
Yeah, I would say like the casual dating it can feel foreign
Mm-hmm.
to like the older generations. I know a lot of the people in my family who got married did so at a very young age. So it wasn't like, oh, I had this many partners. Um, and so you kind of just like meet someone you sort and I also think too, let's say those family members who grew up in smaller rural towns in Latin America where there's also not like that many people, and so if you meet someone you like and you click somewhat, right, you settle down. And so even having access to um like variation and a lot of options for us, it like our generation could feel more normal to want to see, okay, what is it that we can even ask that, what is it that I want versus what is available.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Such a good point. I do have had several senoras that was the case that they came from a small town and he was on his way out
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he was like, okay.
So I also think with certain pressures though is maybe like what will people say either about either about being single or about the person I've chosen to be with if they don't perfectly align with what it's supposed to be. And we can go into all of these tangents, you know, if somebody is queer, if we have um m- like a multicultural relationship, right? Or we have um I think even like socioeconomic status, you know, there's so much pressure of what you should be, like who you should be with. And so again, will this person be able to integrate into my family? Will they be able to relate and because family being for a lot of us so important, and their feedback and opinions carry some weight, you know,
Mhm.
that pressure whenever you're meeting people, what will they say?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that I some of that was I mean, I experienced through that within my own like dating experience with my husband and getting along with the family
Mhm.
was a big
Mhm.
deal. And um, my husband was very much I should have had him come on. He's a fun one to interview. Um, my husband, like I was the first girl he took home because of
Mm,
all that you mentioned. Like he just wasn't he like wanted to know because I think like for him it was like I didn't want and this I think is like male privilege. He was the only boy, so he's the golden child. But he wanted to be able to go in and be like, this is who it is. And like you're not gonna convince me otherwise because he and I like dated and I'm gonna say dated in secret, but we did date in secret for a couple of months. Like we didn't really tell anybody for that reason was that being able to go into our family system because he's Latino to go into our family system and say like, yeah, we've already done the work. Like we're not, it's not really up for debate
right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because of
And
how important. Go ahead.
and being like protective of that,
Mm-hmm.
by setting those like boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that in our like personally in our relationship, I think that our we're both Latinos, and I think that there's a lot of things that we were just like, we're not gonna do that. We're not doing that. um, even though it was like very expected, like culturally to do. So yeah, it was good. And it's hard. That stuff is really hard. I wanna honor that.
Yeah, it is difficult. And we can go into um other conversations around enmeshment, right?
Mm-hmm.
When family members are just so intricately involved in one another's lives, and if it is still challenging to set those boundaries with family, that's really gonna almost be like a third person in the relationship, right? This um like opinion, this noise of what will people say, or um again, not even what I want, but what do we want?
Yeah.
And that can be a little bit dangerous. And just being mindful of, do I feel, not even just in relationships, but in other areas of my life where it's very dependent on what would my family think about this or want or expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that as sometimes our family systems, like I think I've mentioned this is right. Like as a I'm a Christian, so I like hold on to those values. And so like biblically for us, it's we call it leaving and cleaving, where we are leaving our family and then cleaving to one another and creating a new family system. And I think there's like health to that. I don't think that means no community, although sometimes it can be that. But I think it's about putting our people in the right place, in the right priority. And when we talk about some of these family systems that maybe have some of that enmeshment where everyone is like there's no boundaries or at all, or a codependence, and that becomes really hard. So instead of calling your husband to come fix something, you're calling your dad.
Right,
That creates a dynamic within your primary relationship now because it you haven't put people in the right place.
right,
Um, and I think that leave it and cleave it can feel very dangerous to a family system. Um, but I think it protects the like that immediate system.
right, right. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And that can be really hard, right? Like because we love our family and we want to stay connected to our family, and our families don't know our partner the way we know our partner, and so um, that feels like such an excuse. I remember like that being a thing that we we talk about when we're in like abusive relationships. Like you don't know
mm-hmm.
him like I do, but there
Yeah.
but there's a reality that that's also true, and they shouldn't know your partner the way you know your partner because they're not dating
Yeah.
your partner.
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, I can't remember where I was going with that. But anyway, it's important to like as we navigate this dating world is to know what boundaries we need to put in place because of some of the cultural spiciness that comes with dating us.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Should we also maybe talk about some of the stereotypes that um at times, and you mentioned it earlier on about passion versus maybe even some toxicity. And I know we hear terms like la tóxica, el tóxico, almost as a term of endearment, but what does that really mean? And is that really um, do we really know what we mean when we're saying things like that?
Yeah.
And what might be the underlying, um, even like need or desire when we refer to ourselves in that way?
Yeah.
Um, I know, and I think it's just started like in the last few years where I've heard people refer to each other as la tóxica or el tóxico. This is a person who is really maybe I mean, that loves you so much that they don't want you, being seen by others or interacting with others, right? There's like a certain level of possessiveness or of jealousy or of um acting out, if you don't feel that connection. Um, but then followed by maybe grand gestures of reconciliation, again in Mexico, there's the el ramo buchon, which is like the giant, bouquet of flowers, or it's la serenata, or it's gifts. And based off of the telenovelas you may have seen growing up, you slap the guy and then you make out, where there's passion and anger and love almost like are supposed to coexist always. Um, and while that can in the moment maybe feel like very high energy or like, yes, this is passion, um, are you really growing in the ways you want to grow? Are
Yeah,
you really growing in a trust of one another, in a sense of security in the relationship, in vulnerability, like real vulnerability? Um, and so I think just reflecting on, if you or someone tends to lean in that direction, what is it that I really want when I'm maybe seeking out a big reaction or I'm displaying a big reaction? Is it connection? Is it reassurance? Is it validation? Is it attention? And those are all normal needs in a relationship. We may just want to express it in a different way.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I love that. I think that's like such a good reframe because it like like in the child world, we talk about how children's behavior is often communication, especially if they're pre-verbal. But that actually continues into adulthood. Behavior is communication for the most part,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we have those moments that maybe feel a little more volatile, or there's like a more like big affect, big emotions that kind of come out. Um, I think also on the flip side of that, I think La Toxica usually gets it. Like women typically get this maybe a little bit more than men, even though they be out there. I do think that machismo gets a pass a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where I'm kind of jumping ahead on our notes here, but like talking about the Marianismo machismo,
Mm-hmm.
that becomes its own kind of stereotypes. Um, in dating where there's a kind of an expectation that women be quiet and submissive no matter how he treats you, and everything kind of and I understand that I live in a kind of a unique world because I'm a therapist and I see dynamics in a really right, like you and I can look at La Toxica and pull that apart in a way that maybe other people can't,
Right.
right? And so I want to preface that to say this. It is shocking to me how some of these dynamics we're talking about feel so old school or sound so old school, like this is something our parents dealt with, and they're still running rampant now in Gen Z.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I am watching these young women get into these dating relationships, and the machismo is running crazy, but we won't label it that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, it just has blown my, like my mind that this is like, um, yeah, and that sometimes like things get put back on us as women, and I'm like, no, 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 this is not you.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is this is not you. This is something that has been ingrained in culture for generations, and you're not exempt. Um, and if we're not really, I think one of the kind of neat things about when cultures kind of interact is that we can have another like culture to compare to, and not that that's always helpful, but sometimes it can be, right? And so I think that in some of our countries that might be more insular or where culture is more monotone, right? Like there's just a
Yeah.
lot of similarity across the board, and whatever is a little bit nuanced is not like can necessarily. It might be like difference in foods. Difference in foods is a lot different than difference in values or
Yeah.
assumptions,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think one of the kind of interesting things about the mainstream American culture, and there's like this drive for independence, is that we can go into dating, have a little bit of a rub when we're falling into some of this really like stark marianismo, machismo, where women are
Mhm.
super submissive and men are very machista and domineering.
Right.
Um, there's it's in a different context for it to get a little bit of pushback.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know where I'm all over the place, but I think like that kind of falls into those stereotypes is that we kind of get a bad rap as women around La Toxica, Puerto. I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked like if I'm a crazy Puerto Rican woman because of the stereotype around
Mm.
La Toxica. And
Mm.
um, Anthony can confirm I am not, but also that's a stereotype. That's a stereotype.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to be careful when we go into dating situations and we're not noticing these patterns in ourselves or in others, right?
Mhm.
Like you're just like culturally, this is an expectation, right?
Mhm.
Like culturally, we're expecting her to be toxica.
Mhm.
Culturally, we're expecting um, him to be machista,
Mhm.
um, and that will just take these. Sometimes it scraps, especially if there's not a change of behavior.
Mhm. Mhm. I think there I keep saying it, but there is in the midst of these some of these patterns continuing, there is still new new people challenging that, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are um new new or just more conversations around emotions and mental health within certain male communities, especially Latino males,
Yes.
where the idea of breaking these generational patterns applies to both men and women. So I will give credit to that. There's been more conversations around it is okay to, as a man, to
Mm-hmm.
show that you're feeling sad and that you're feeling hurt and that you're feeling disappointed. Um, Again, a lot of what I think fuels those beliefs that a lot of those beliefs that fuel machismo might be, well, I have to be strong. I was always shown that men have to be strong, or I have to be strong enough for the both of us. And more conversations and just informing ourselves and educating ourselves that that's not always the most helpful. If you're holding in all your feelings at all times, again, where is that connection happening? When can I trust my partner to be able to hold these feelings that I'm having? um and so I do just want to give credit to those conversations that are happening.
Absolutely. And I think that that segues us perfect into um, our some of our strengths culturally when we talk about love. I do want to highlight just for a second. Brene Brown talks about this, and so does oh my gosh, Bell Hooks in her book All About Love, or in their book All About Love. uh, how as these conversations are happening with men, and it's like really incredible. In Dallas, there's a lot of big movement. The I got to shout out Rene. He
Mhm.
does men do therapy.
Mhm.
Um, and Bridging the Gap. Patrick LeBlanc is also doing really incredible work here with men of color. Um, but they both talk about is that as women, we also have to do our own work to be able to hold these emotions. Like we want these men to be emotionally close to us. We want them to share, and we have to be able to hold space for that in a way that honors their masculinity and manhood.
Mhm.
just the way that we would expect them to be soft with us, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we share an emotion. And that can be really hard work um, for us as women. And I think it's really beautiful work. And so Brene Brown talks about how a woman who can like call this out in a man or like call them in, like create a safe space for vulnerability and can hold space then for them to show up in that has done enough of their own work that it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a shaming experience for them, especially if
Mm-hmm.
we've been asking and asking for them to open up and then we kind of drop the ball
Yeah.
because it creates a response in us.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm. Wow.
yeah, it and Bell Hooks writes about it too. Um, and so I think that because of that marianismo machismo kind of thing that happens is like we don't want a man to be machista, but then they show like us maybe it's like more softness or more vulnerability, and then we're like, well, if they're like this, then and we I don't think we think this consciously, right? But if there's a softness in them, that makes me feel insecure, or lacking security. That's what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
And so then that kind of
Reinforces the other.
yeah,
The
like
other
right,
thing.
like there's a dance that happens there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I do think there is a really cool kind of shift in culture, especially with our younger men.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for calling that out.
Which is needed.
It
Needed.
is needed. It is needed. Well, and here's the thing, part of that loneliness epidemic, like they also called like a men's loneliness epidemic. A couple, I think it was last summer, I went and did a presentation for um, one of the Texas associations of juvenile like officers.
Okay. Okay.
And so it's mainly men. It's not all men, but like 95% of
Mm-hmm.
in the room
I believe it.
is men. Yeah. And it was so curious to me because I called out the men's loneliness epidemic. Woof. And there were responses. It was really cool to kind of have them
Mm.
like lean in,
Live reaction. Yeah.
live reaction. They're like, we're not lonely. And I'm like, that's not what the
Mm.
research is saying.
Yeah.
And really getting to hear them and ask and right like one of the things they mentioned was like they go to their women and they're like we love our girls, like we love our women, but then we do these things and they have such a reaction that it makes it an unsafe space for us to do the
Mm.
exact thing. And so it was really cool to just hear them talk about what they're doing to kind of help combat, right? And there was a big difference between like the older men in the room who were who had kind of learned like how important community was versus some of the younger men who were still kind of figuring that out.
Mhm.
And they maybe didn't name it because I think there was right like there's like 150 men in this room. I don't know that
Right.
that's like the best space for a group therapy session,
Right.
but some of these younger men who haven't quite figured that out and are trying to be like, oh yeah, I mean I do kind of feel that and I don't necessarily want to name it. It was a very
So
eye-opening experience. Yeah.
interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
and men of color too, which I thought was even better.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
Um, so kind of moving into some of our strengths and like on the flip, all of the things we've talked about, there's like a flip side to it, right? Um, like I think we are loyal people. Like my
Mm-hmm.
man is my ride or die. Like that is and I think he feels the same way about me. And I think like as a people, like as a culture, we are really loyal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that served us well in dating relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think with loyalty, um, even if it, how do I say it? With loyalty, it's, you are mine, I am yours, right? We're a team. Um, and how that is manifested, maybe not in the exact way that one might think, but like as we're talking about loyalty and strengths and in certain relationships, especially maybe older men, I've noticed that for them, loyalty is providing, right? I'm being loyal to my obligation to provide for you and the family. And so sometimes that is like going to work every day very early. And even like when it gets really hard, not complaining about that and just showing up, like showing up is that. expression of loyalty.
Mhm.
And even um I know in some couples counseling like frameworks or approaches, they talk about there's a word. It's kind of like recognition, um, appreciate. It's like a blend of appreciation and recognition. Oh my gosh.
I'm like not helping at all. I'm like, yeah, I'm listening. I'm curious.
um,
Is
oh
it
my,
from Gottman? I'm like thinking.
yeah, yeah.
Um, okay,
Um,
let's pull Gottman stuff up. The Googling.
okay.
Let's see. Is it, are you talking about? A ver, vamos a ver.
I think it might just be like appreciate, like,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's like fondness. That's
yeah,
what he calls it. Sharing
yeah.
fondness and admiration.
Admiration,
Mhm.
admiration. Yes, fondness and admiration.
We were gonna get
Um,
there.
there is a scene in Jane the Virgin, if anybody's seen the series,
So,
where her grandmother, it's later in the series, her grandmother finds a partner. I think they get married. So her husband and Jane was used to like them growing up in all female house and independent and bringing in a man, an older man was like hard and they of course are like more traditional couple and she would make the food and he would be more quiet watching TV. And so in one of the scenes Jane's like complaining to her grandma of like I just basically like I don't know why you're falling into that role and what does he do for you and you do so much for him. And um the grandma is like, Jane, you're only seeing, what you want to see, but every morning before I even get out of bed, I have at my bedside table a hot mug of coffee and my warm slippers ready for me to greet the day. And that is his act of love for me in the mornings, right? Like she begins to present to her these little examples of which she admires and is fond of in her relationship with him, like how he's showing loyalty, how he's showing acts of service, how he's showing um just love to her. And I thought that was so interesting because again, we may have these expectations or generational differences in what love is and what is a strength. And I think it was a nice uh, just example of we can also take the time to appreciate both partners appreciate those little things and
absolutely.
find the strengths in those little moments. And again, regardless of what other people see or say, if you are aligned in those values together, that's what's gonna matter at the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that relationship patterns, um, like the goal is health. How we get to health can look very different from person to person. And I even think about my own mother in law who she loved serving her family, loved serving her family. And she and I used to talk a lot about, especially when I was first getting married, about kind of what she expected me to do for my husband.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, I think she got to know me for who I am and not necessarily for who she expected me to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we had kind of this right, and I think one of the beautiful parts of it was just seeing how the way she served her family was her love language, and she had a lot of peace around
Mm-hmm.
that, and how that might just look a little different for me and how I
Mm-hmm.
serve my family. um, but the goal is health, right? So
Yeah.
that she can do it in maybe a more not conservative but like a more traditional kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
and that was just going to be a little bit different for the way I do it for my husband,
Yeah.
or how we interact.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that was hard for our family system to wrap their head around, because I tend to be a little bit different than his family. He has two sisters, um, So I'm just different than maybe the women in his family. And it works for us in a way that might look different than it works for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Um, Kind of going back to passion, I think that we are like, I think passion, I think we can get addicted to the feeling of passion, and that's kind of when we kind of lean into the stereotype. But I also think like just overall, there's just like a lot of romance, a lot of just culturally, there is just like the PDA and the matching outfits and the sweet pet
Yeah.
names, right? That even maybe some of the men that we might consider more that lean more machista, or they just have more of those like characteristics. They I always feel like there's a little bit like of a tenderness
Yes.
that I've seen kind of pop out that I'm just like, oh, so precious. Because I do think we're a little bit more romantic than just like any culture. We just love it.
Yes. I mean, the the even like I think of certain songs like so my dad's in construction and remodeling and like on their work sites you have like the music playing and like most of the music is a love song, right? Like these men are working to these love songs and um as you were talking about there was something you mentioned but I think sometimes I even see like photo shoots on Facebook of just them like snuggled up with their partner, their wife, and like the pet names or they yeah, there's like a sweetness to it of they they want that like telenovela love
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And I think that you can cultivate that. Like I think that can be something that um, is cultivated. I don't think it has to be la tóxica, el tóxico, but I think that you can definitely cultivate. I love the trend of romanticizing your life.
Mhm.
Everything has a caveat. Everything is nuanced, but I do love that, and I think you can do that in relationship, right? Like, yeah, if you want to dance in the kitchen, go dance in the kitchen,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Like, if you wanna, and maybe the first time doesn't feel special, and maybe the second time doesn't feel special, and it doesn't get the feeling that you're wanting, but the more you practice those things, the more it actually becomes those things,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And the more it actually starts to embody that feeling that you're hoping to get.
Mhm.
Um, and so we in our house, we just kind of, or at least I do this. Anthony goes along with me because he's my number one fan. But he like for me, I'm like, I'm gonna make everything special.
Mm.
And 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 sometimes and it's for me it's about the fact that like I might not always get the feeling I'm looking for in terms of like this just like nostalgia, but when I look back at pictures I do. Or like right
Mm.
like and I'm like, how do I want to show up in my life, in my relationship this way? And maybe it
Mhm.
doesn't always land the way I'm like hoping, but I'd rather do that and put the effort forward for those things than
Right.
the other way around,
Mhm. Mhm. Oh
right?
yeah.
um and I think we can do that with our romantic relationships, our dating relationships, is like we romanticize it, and I think culturally we already do that very well.
Yes, yes. Even like certain words, like you, I know you mentioned the pet names or like being called mi amor or mi vida. I think of the word apapachar, just being held and being like loved on, and there's not no direct translation in English for that feeling. Um, yes, you have like cuddling or snuggling or hugging, but it's not the same.
Not the same. It's not the
Um,
same. It's
there's
I
yeah.
always think about like apapachar is to be like smothered, like does it just be smothered in love? Like you're just
Yeah.
um like it's like when someone tucks you in and then they just
Mm,
like they tuck you in and it's all real tight and they just like hold your face, and that's what I always think about
so
when
cozy.
yeah. Cozy. Cozy is a good word that I would put with apapachar. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah. I also love that in Spanish we have two words for love, like te quiero y te amo. Um, and I love that so much because I remember I don't think like in English it doesn't really right. We only have love. You either love
Mhm.
someone or you like someone. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love
yeah.
te quiero because I remember when we were like when I was in high school and we would date is like what was a little bit different for me is that sometimes you would date and then you guys would be friends after.
Oh
Like
yeah.
like a lot of us, right? Like we would just be friends after. And because there's like this te quiero, like there's like this like cariño for these people who have kind of come into your life.
Mhm,
And I don't think that's always the case or appropriate, but I love that te quiero can be a lot of love for someone
mhm.
we can express that in a way that we can't express that in English.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Let me think. Are there any other words that we?
Um, like like that one, no. I mean, I think there's um like
I don't know if there's other ones. It'll probably come to us after the fact.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do have a couple memes to share.
Yay, meantime.
Meantime, well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Like such a good conversation about dating. Our next one is going to be a little bit more practical in the sense of healthy relationships, healthy romance, and talking about some specific skills that you guys can take back to your relationship. I'm gonna pull up. I don't have that many today. Um, but a good one is I love to watch Modern Family, and Modern Family has great, especially with Gloria, great. Some of those cultural dynamics get it can be really good. There's like this one where she's like, "I'm Latin, I can be mad at whatever." Um,
Gosh.
this one's it's a little blurry, but it says, "Por favor, get up and make me a plate. My mom is watching."
Oh my goodness. This is so funny. I remember when I went over to my fiance's like because they do Sunday barbecues and so um it wasn't that they had that expectation of me, but I do remember him like making me a plate and bringing it to me and being like, oh, what are they gonna say? Like, is anybody looking? But I think over time it's just like, yeah, no, I mean everybody can serve themselves.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I always think it's funny because I've heard this dynamic specifically where it's been like at home, it's like a different story, but when he's in front of his mom, like they kind of play
You have
this
to perform.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, whatever, I guess whatever works. How Latinas be like when they're waiting for you to lie and they already know the truth? Waits in Spanish.
Oh man,
Funny.
intuition is strong. Oh
Yeah,
my
it
God.
it really is. When you're single and people tell you there's plenty of fish in the sea, but your
Oh
inbox looks like
my Lord.
so
I
true.
just, I don't know. I don't feel there's been, I don't know, maybe I'm generalizing, but if you don't know someone, I don't know why you are DMing anybody on
Yeah.
social media. That just should just kind of be a rule of thumb. Unless you've had maybe like one real conversation in person, then
Mhm.
you can follow up.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
don't do that.
Yeah. I can't tell you. I mean, I get it. Like I get dating apps. I understand the concept of it. I do think that it can be really helpful, especially if like you're not around a lot of people or like, like I think about like my work from home folks that they're
Yeah.
not in the office. So you're like, where do you meet people? You usually meet them at work or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I also think that sometimes the online thing can be really hard because you can do a conversation really well online and then you get in person and they can't
Doesn't feel the
hold it.
same.
Yeah, it doesn't feel the same. Also,
I
go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say that we didn't really touch on it, but we can just briefly of yeah, how do people then meet, right? If maybe the apps aren't meeting that need, or in person it doesn't feel like there's an organic way. And I think this applies to both friendships and
Mm-hmm.
relationships, which do something that you just naturally like to do and would find yourself doing regularly, whether that is getting involved with like a gardening group or a dance class or somewhere where even if it feels silly, like even if I know a lot of people might turn down like those mixer opportunities or this the I know at the zoo here in San Antonio for Valentine's they're having a like a meet your mate or something like that,
So
and
fresh.
you can bring you they give you different tags, and depending on the color it's like single or wing person. And so you can go with friends. And even if it feels silly, that just means you're meeting other people who think like you and are okay being silly. And I think that's probably a good place to meet people is things
Absolutely.
you're naturally already inclined to do and enjoy doing. And if it feels a little bit vulnerable and silly, just know that's the kind of person who's showing up to those events too.
Absolutely. And I think with that, right, it's good practice, right? Just in general, we have to practice our social skills. I hate networking. How do I get better at networking? We do more networking things, right? Like, um, and so sometimes, like, I don't know how true this was or if this was AI. The world is getting really, really complicated. But I saw on Reddit this guy posted about how he changed his like dating style, and he moved from really focusing on like his internal world and how he's showing up to being really naturally curious
Mhm.
about the other person. And he did it like for like 30 days, so he kept putting himself in situations and practicing asking questions. And so one of his big things at the end was like, I didn't necessarily find like someone to date, but I by the end I had talked to a lot more people because I was like naturally curious and had a lot more connection. And maybe it didn't turn into a date, but versus when he was always thinking about his internal experience where he's not talking to anyone.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um and how, and I think like that was like so eye-opening and key for us to think about, like as we put ourselves into these shared spaces, I can learn how to be curious and to talk to people and practice that, which lends to someone actually coming up and
Yeah.
chatting with me and
Mhm.
maybe like dating.
Oh,
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on today's or this week's episode of Sobremesa Chats, talking about dating. Next week, I can't wait for our next one. Healthy romance, and relationship skills. We have a lot of good like tips and tricks that we are antsy as therapists. We are ready to share. We want you guys to be in healthy relationships.
yes, 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 yes.
Um, we also, I don't know, Elizabeth, if you want to talk about your book club.
Oh, yes. For anybody in San Antonio, we are starting a self-care for Chingonas book club. So, um, I believe the first the first one will start this coming Monday, February 9th,
Okay.
from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. here at our office. And you we'll read, part of the book, and then we will have an activity that coincides with each chapter. So
Love
it'll
that.
be different activities every week, different forms of self-care, right? Self-care is not just one thing.
Mhm.
So we'll have conversations about how to incorporate that, even if you're busy or even if you feel like you don't have all the resources in the world, how can we still adapt that? Because it's stressful out there. And so having community and having opportunities to learn about that are definitely available here. So
Mhm.
again, if you are in San Antonio and if you're interested in this, um, I think we'll have like either an Eventbrite or some type of registration on our website soon. And yeah, yeah, be on the
Yeah.
lookout for that.
Yeah. And if they are seeing this after February 9th, is this a drop in book
Um,
club?
Yes, yes. So it's not like it's not a fiction book, right? It's very nonfiction, almost like a manual of how to incorporate self-care. So if you do miss one week, it's not like you've missed part of the plot, right? There's still something for you. And then I believe we are posting the themes for each week. I believe so. And so you might even look ahead and say, okay, I think I really want to make time for the yoga one, or I really want to make time for the craft one, and just kind of whatever connects with you.
Yeah. This is a great opportunity to practice.
Yes.
Yes. And I don't know if we mentioned this in one of our other episodes, but the world is heavy right now.
Mhm.
Also feeling a lot like hot garbage.
Mhm.
And so if you're just needing, Elizabeth and I had talked about earlier this week with our own staff around how it's heavy for a lot of folks. And so it becomes a really important time to take care of ourselves, really leaning into regulation and self-care and connection. And so maybe, you're need someone else, or you need kind of a somewhat neutral, non-biased person to chat with. Just know that you guys can always reach out. We do take all major insurances. We do cash pay, and we have a full staff that is available to just chat. If you just need extra support during this time, you can check it out at cannentacenter.com. And maybe you do need support and you're like, the economic times are rough around here, which is also true.
Mhm.
And you're like, I can't afford a full session. We do have low cost sessions available through our foundation.
Yeah.
And so you can apply at cannentafoundation.org. So thank you again for joining us. We will see you guys on the next one.